The AFT. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Beginning tonight, where web video meets the Goldman Sachs fraud case, in which the investment firm allegedly created a mortgage derivative to fail and did not disclose to buyers that the company was betting against them. The Huffington Post put together a mashup called the Ultimate Goldman Sachs Metaphor Video. Cars figure big.
Yeah, I had one guy tell me it's like betting on the Indy 500.
Goldman, as a bank, was really just staging a car race so that some people could bet on whether the car would crash or not.
We're going to bet that this car is going to crash. They're not sure whether the car is going to crash. They know it's a crappy car.
They're all crap. I think they're all crap. Can you make me a synthetic basket? Hey, I've made Dylan this basket of crap he requested.
But guess what? Sometimes crappy cars make it through the Indy 500.
Was that car, were the brakes tampered with ahead of time?
I'm just going to be blunt with you. It sounds to me a little bit like selling a car with faulty brakes and then buying an insurance policy on the buyer of those cars.
Roger's right, using this analogy of the cars, if you will, with the brakes that are faulty.
So imagine, I want you to imagine if I was a car manufacturer. I'm the biggest car company in the country, manufacturing cars where the brakes don't work. So I've got a shiny red Ferrari right here. I'm going to take the engine part out here. I then bet that the car will crash. It does.
You built a shiny Ferrari actually without brakes.
So that it explodes, blow up.
Oh, you didn't even build the brakes.
Whether I put the brakes in or cut the line, either way it's going to fail.
Why are we staging car races so that people can bet on whether they'll crash when it does nothing for society?
Let's treat Goldman Sachs as if it were an antique car dealer.
Cars that explode.
Think about that. It's easy to understand a used car. But we're not talking cars here. We're talking mortgage-backed securities. My used car analogy, do you think it explained?
Yeah, I think the car analogy is great.
More on automotive and other business ethics shortly. And later on tonight's program, updating privacy law for the internet age. Also, what kind of art happens when artists and techies get together? And Surf City, our own news update about the web and society. All this, plus the 5th anniversary of YouTube. The full 5-year YouTube mashup later, but let's turn our attention for a few minutes to immigration. Always a hot issue, but especially since Arizona passed that law requiring police to check the documents of people they somehow suspect are in the country illegally. New York is more immigrant-friendly. In fact, a special 5-day helpline for immigration and citizenship questions opened this week. It's part of Citizenship Now, a joint project of the City University of New York and the Daily News. Volunteers from CUNY Law School, Legal Aid, and the New York Immigration Coalition are staffing the phones till Friday evening. See the numbers below. CUNY Chancellor Matthew Goldstein greeted Mayor Bloomberg, who dropped by for the opening. Asked about Arizona, his honor joined the chorus condemning their new law, but with his own economic melody.
But this is not good for the country, and I don't happen to agree with it. We love immigrants here, and a practical point of view in Arizona, other than looking at how people dress or the color of their skin or their accent or what language they're speaking, how else would a cop know? So if that's the case, what about all Americans who dress differently, look differently, speak another language, have accents? They're going to get stopped just as well. And I think it will hurt their business. Tourists, why would you go there if there's a risk of you getting hassled if you're a foreign businessman? Or an American businessman, why would you go? The hassle of somebody potentially pulling you apart if you didn't have papers, going to jail? If other states adopt this, it's very bad for the country. If they're the only ones, it's good for New York because people will come here. If we want to have a future, we need more immigrants here, and we should get control of our borders, and we should decide who we want, what languages, what skills. We need people that work with their hands and people that work with their minds. And we have to get real about the 12 million undocumented here. We're not going to deport them. Give them permanent status. Don't make them citizens unless they can qualify, but give them permanent status and let's get on with this.
The CUNY Daily News Immigration Helpline numbers are still on the screen, 212-330-6505 for English and 212-330-6506 for Spanish. If you need another language, just ask the volunteer who answers. The lines are open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. through Friday. You're watching Brian Lehrer Live. The other big issue this week that we touched on earlier with that Goldman Sachs mashup, business ethics. Is the phrase an oxymoron on Wall Street? What if Wall Streeters, like doctors, had to promise something like, first do no harm? Would the financial crisis still have happened? Well, a group of students in the Harvard Business School class of 2009 decided that they have a responsibility to follow certain ethical standards in their careers. So they created what they call the MBA Oath. Peter Escher joins us via Skype from Boston. He's one of the creators of the Oath and the co-author of the new book, The MBA Oath, Setting a Higher Standard for Business Leaders. Thanks very much for joining us. Hello from New York.
Brian, how are you?
Good. What's in this oath?
You know, to pick up the car analogy, the oath is the speed limits and the guideline for manufacturing that go into how a car would be made. The idea is that, like you said, doctors have a Hippocratic oath that says first do no harm, but business has no such oath or guideline. So the oath speaks to acting with integrity, following the law, and balancing multiple stakeholders.
For people to see it, here's the cover of your book, The MBA Oath. I'm going to read from a little bit of the preamble. And see, and by the way, thank you for paying attention to our previous segment with the car analogies. But this says, your very first words, as a manager, my purpose is to serve the greater good by bringing together people and resources to create value that no single individual can build alone. Now, dude, we are talking Wall Street. These people are going to read this and they're going to say, this is communist.
You know, a lot of my classmates are on Wall Street and have worked on Wall Street prior to coming to business school. And I think that you'll notice a shift in the MBA sentiment. In the midst of this financial crisis, students do want to make a profit. They want to make a paycheck, but they also want to do well by society.
How do you apply that in practical terms? I'm just going to stay with that preamble. My purpose is to serve the greater good by bringing together people and resources to create value that no single individual can build alone. And in all seriousness, a lot of your colleagues or future colleagues on Wall Street are going to say, my purpose is to go out there and aggressively make as much money as I can. And in the course of doing that, I am building more value for society than I could possibly build by holding back my for-profit impulse.
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's pick up right on the Goldman Sachs trial. High drama yesterday, as most people saw. Senator Levin asking Lloyd Blankfein, don't you have a duty to the customer? Don't you have a duty of disclosure? That's a gray area. That's an area where there's less regulation. And the MBA oath is not a prescription in the same way the Hippocratic oath is not necessarily a prescription, but it does provide a framework to begin to answer that question.
And it does, and I'll read a little bit of that too. I don't know if this is the exact part of the oath that you had in mind, but when I read this, and of course this book was written before the charges against Goldman were filed, right. But you seem to have anticipated it almost spot on, because this says, I will take responsibility for my actions, and I will represent the performance and risks of my enterprise accurately and honestly. Bingo, that's exactly what they're accused of fraud for not doing. Right. My aim will not be to distort the truth, but to explain transparency, to transparently explain it and help people understand how decisions that affect them are made. That obviously was not the value that was being followed here, according to the facts that we know.
That's right. I think the biggest issue that people have in reading the headlines today is that they felt like Goldman dodged the issue, that Goldman was out of touch with the public sentiment, that there should be transparency and there should be responsibility for the customer. I can't say on either side what the judgment should be. I think that's for the courts to say, but certainly the MBA oath does surface the issue.
But how far does that go in real life? I mean, how many salespeople will ever go that far to say, my aim will be to transparently explain it and help people understand how decisions that affect them are made. If you're sitting with a used car on your lot that may not have the brakes tampered with, as in that video, but something short of that that makes the salesperson know that, this car is only okay. Maybe the same with a securities derivative. The stockbroker who gives me the cold call is not going to disclose everything, right?
Well, let me put it this way. There are 150,000 MBA degrees that are conferred every year. That's a big deal. And if you want to go and influence these students who will go on to influence organizations like Goldman Sachs and will sell things like corporate derivative swaps, you have to begin when they're in school and when they're forming ideas about the purpose of business.
So how many of you came together for this oath, and how are you disseminating it?
Yeah, the oath is not a new idea. I want to be clear on that. It really goes back to the founding of business schools. If you look back 100 years, the idea of a professional code of conduct was imbued within the founding ideals of Harvard Business School, for example. For us, it began in May of 2009. Guess what? We looked around. We were graduating into the worst economy in 80 years. Many of us didn't have jobs that thought we would have a job after spending $100,000, $150,000 and taking on student loans. So it began rather informally. Students saying, let's do something different. MBAs are being tarnished in the press and the media. What if we said there should be a higher code of conduct? And that's, for us, is when the MBA Oath began.
Are you getting reaction to it from the professional world?
And that's the beauty of it. We've had over 200 schools represented on our signer list. We've had thousands of MBAs, both current and past, sign. We're working with the Aspen Institute, with the World Economic Forum, who all embody multiple constituencies and business practitioners. And that's the real magic of this, is when you have business people who are in the trenches saying, we believe that business should be done differently.
How much can this help you navigate gray areas where the exact proper ethical course isn't necessarily crystal clear?
Our idea is pretty simple. It's that if you're able to articulate what you believe before a situation arises, you'll be able to identify the situation, explore the context. And so you see this in business context today with Google and balancing its revenues and the censorship in China. You see it with Toyota and its product recall. You see it with Goldman Sachs balancing its duty of disclosure to customers and its duty to make profits. And we're not here to say that the MBA Oath is going to answer all these questions, but it will create the right framework to surface the issues prior to them happening.
The MBA Oath includes a pledge to create sustainable prosperity. What's that, and why does it relate to this?
Sure. We think the environment is something that we all operate within. We think that it's an important stakeholder, as well as customers, as well as employees. And so when we talk about sustainable prosperity, we think of it as creating resources in such a way that future generations will still be able to enjoy the environment in which we are able to operate within.
Do you think that business education is changing nationwide, not just at Harvard, in response to the financial crisis?
I think it has to. I think it has to. You know, currently at Harvard Business School, over 15% of the students have signed this MBA Oath, so this thing does have some legs. I think business schools are starting to look around and say, what sort of ethical platform should we have? Currently, there is none across all these different schools. We think it's a great idea that there should be some sort of standard, and we hope the MBA Oath can help to facilitate that discourse.
You were involved in this oath as a member of the class of 2009 at the Harvard Business School. You now are actually employed in finance. Congratulations. What has it been like to see this from the professional side as opposed to the student side? Have you continued to dare to carry this torch into the real world?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, Brian, let me say this, that I graduated without a job, so no one's going to cry for a Harvard Business School graduate. But I did feel that unemployment for about 6 months. I am now working with Liberty Mutual as an investment manager. And the first thing that I did actually in week 1 was post the company's values and mission statement next to my computer. I haven't necessarily encountered ethical dilemmas in my 3 months there, but it is something I think about daily.
Are you asking people to sign at your workplace? And who did sign the oath? Did Fabrice Touré sign the oath, or who signed the oath?
Well, you can go online to mbaoath.org to find out who is signed. We think that a public articulation of your beliefs is meaningful. We think words do matter. I've searched Fabrice. The Fabulous Fab is not on our list. But there are signers from many different schools from around the world.
Has anybody told you why they declined to sign the oath?
That's an interesting question. I've got a dear friend who I was just talking to today who's an MD and an MBA. It's a joint degree, and he says, I just don't think that the MBA oath would make me any more ethical. It wouldn't change my behavior based on how I currently act. And so we get that from a lot of students. Our response is we would want to live in a world where students articulate what they believe before they go out and enter the business space.
Peter, good luck in the insurance industry. Thank you very much for coming on and talking about the MBA oath.
Brian, thanks a lot.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. Here are this week's online video picks, and this week they are rolled into one. Last Friday was the 5th anniversary of the first YouTube video, April 23rd, 2005. Alan Smith, who used to be a producer of this program, put together a 5-minute mashup of YouTube's first 5 years for my WNYC radio show. The emphasis, of course, is where web video on YouTube met the issues.
Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem.
Happy birthday, YouTube.
No, Daddy bit me.
Whether it starts in 07 or 8, I think, is immaterial, and I also think it's going to last not just for quarters, but for years. See, the basic problem with the U.S. economy is we have too much consumption and borrowing and not enough production and savings.
And we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House! Yeah!
John Kerry gave the enemy for free what I and many of my comrades in North Vietnam in the prison camps took torture to avoid saying.
This fella here over here with the yellow shirt, Macaca, or whatever his name is.
Aaron Burr is a rich dude. Aaron Burr decides he wants to run for president. Alexander Hamilton thinks he wouldn't be a good president, so he starts a campaign.
Conservatism is not about the party, because the party's merely the shell. It's the inside, it's the filling that really means something. So.
And as for the television's so-called plan,
in the long run, Americans have good reason to be confident in our economic strength.
Why don't you give me a call when you want to start taking things a little more seriously?
I didn't do anything! Don't tase me, bro! Don't tase me!
Well, I guess a video blog is about me. My name is Bree. I'm 16. I don't really want to tell you where I live because...
As many of you know, over the last few months, I've been thinking hard about my plans for 2008.
I hope to keep this conversation all the way to November 2008.
That old Beach Boys song, Bomberan. Bom, 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 bom. Anyway,
I'm going to joke around, and if someone doesn't like it, my advice to them is to lighten up.
Whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can.
Yeah, Obama on the left, McCain on the right.
their neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills raise their hand? How about we all? President Obama, are you listening?
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk.
At the North Pole, new satellite photos show Arctic ice is melting so fast. Oh snap, how fast? Many scientists now predict it won't be gone within 30 years.
Surely you just, I'm on the cardiac arrest,
That mashup of the first 5 years of YouTube videos produced by Alan Smith for WNYC, this week's sole online video pick. It's Brian Lehrer Live. I'm Brian. Now something new on our program, news briefs about the web and society. We call it Surf City. Lead story, never underestimate the power of social networking. Yesterday, there was a mass walkout of students in many New Jersey schools to protest school budget cuts. It was largely the result of a lone Facebook invitation from a recent New Jersey high school grad named Michelle Ryan Leuto. A month ago, she made a Facebook page calling for the protest. She sent it to 600 people on her own list and asked them to pass it on. 18,000 accepted the invitation. The largest protest was in Newark, where thousands filled the streets and steps of City Hall. Ryan Leuto, an aspiring actress who created the invitation, told the New York Times that anybody can get their opinion out the way she did, and she hopes high schoolers protest more to change things in their way. Meanwhile, New York Senator Charles Schumer is in a face-off with Facebook. Sunday, he and other Democrats asked the social networking site to make its new instant personalization service opt-in rather than opt-out. Translation: Facebook recently changed the rules so your personal data now gets shared with third-party advertisers more easily and forever, including your friends list. And this happens automatically unless you turn it off. Facebook argues that the new features promote social activity, but in response to the senator's objections, they did agree that more scrutiny is needed over their handling of personal data. We'll see if they actually now act on that. We love data visualizations here. Like news photos, a computer graphic can be worth 1,000 words, but not if it takes 1,000 words to explain it. Check this out. This tortured graphic went viral on the net. Also graced the pages of many newspapers. And what is it? It's a PowerPoint slide of our strategy in Afghanistan, prepared for a high-level presentation there last summer. Said Marine Corps General James Mattis, "PowerPoint makes us stupid." Expect more prosecutions for intellectual property violations and computer crime. The Justice Department has appointed 15 new assistant U.S. attorneys and 20 FBI special agents to fight high-tech crimes here and abroad. New York gets one of the attorney positions, plus one of the 4 FBI squads. And expect a prosecution or two in the case of the next-generation 4G iPhone that an Apple employee left on a Silicon Valley bar stool last month. Gawker Media appears to be a target. The digital publisher admits to buying the prototype of this 4G iPhone from the person who found it. And though Gawker did send it back to Apple, they first dissected it and showed it to one of their bloggers, Jason Chen, so he could write about it on their Gizmodo site. Apple asked for legal action, and on Monday, police confiscated Chen's computers and other items from his home. Gawker claims the seizure is illegal, that journalists are protected from search warrants, but there's another law that applies here. In California, it's considered stealing if you find property but fail to give it back. So the seller may be prosecuted, while Gawker may be hit with buying stolen property. And that's Surf City, our web and society news briefs for this week. It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Onto a story that deserves more than brevity. How much privacy do we have online? Especially as so many of us have been perfectly content to exchange information about ourselves for access to useful web tools like email, free news, and the ability to connect with old high school friends and get them out to anti-budget cut demonstrations. It's not just the large internet advertising platforms that want in on our user data. According to a recently released Google tool, which we'll take a look at later, during the second half of 2009, the U.S. government made over 3,500 requests for information about Google users and Google products. With us to discuss how safe our personal information is in the hands of the internet giants and what can be done to protect us, via Skype from Washington, D.C., Senior Counsel for the Electronic Privacy Information Center, John Verdi. John, hello from New York. Thanks a lot for doing this with us.
Thank you, Brian.
Tell us about those 3,500 government requests for information about Google users and Google products. What was the government looking for?
Typically, these sorts of requests are promulgated as part of a criminal investigation. You know, these aren't requests from civil investigations or lawsuits. It's basically government law enforcement agencies looking for individual users' data.
So if I were to say, well, if I didn't do anything wrong, then I don't have anything to fear from this, is that a sufficient way to look at it?
You know, it's really not. The reality is that no matter what Eric Schmidt from Google might say, there are lots of folks in the United States who put information online that they protect with passwords and they put on Google services and that they consider to be private and that they would prefer law enforcement agents not be looking at, whether or not that has anything to do with a crime. You know, innocent folks get caught up in law enforcement investigations all the time. And it's not necessarily a comfortable feeling to have your personal information reviewed by a federal agent.
And when you say they also ask for information about Google products, what does that mean? What might be an example of that?
Typically, Google will break up these requests for information by products. For example, one of Google's products is Search. Another one of their products is Gmail, their email service. Another product is Google Docs, which encourages folks to put potentially really sensitive documents like Excel spreadsheets and word processing documents online.
There's an issue here, I gather, with Google Buzz. Explain to people who may not even be familiar with it what Google Buzz is, and then tell us what the privacy issue involves.
You know, we filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission about Google Buzz, and this is a product that Google launched. It's a social networking product that aims to compete with sites like Facebook and Twitter and MySpace, and that's all well and good. But the problem happened during the launch when Google decided to convert all of its Google email users, its Gmail users, into Buzz users, whether they liked it or not. Google integrated Buzz and its social networking component with Gmail. And as a result, individuals' email contacts, the folks in your address book that you email with often, were released to the public. And what that means is that individuals' most intimate contacts on email were all of a sudden accessible to folks that they never anticipated would be able to see them.
I want to get your reaction to this. We have a Google video explaining from their point of view why they think they protect our privacy well. Let's watch this.
At Google, we make privacy a priority in everything we do. Here are our 5 guiding principles. 1. Use information to provide our users valuable products and services. Using your information can make our products even more useful. For example, if you search for golf, are you looking to work on your drive or drive a Volkswagen? If you previously searched for information about a caddy, we can take this as a hint that you mean the sport, not the car, and we can show you the most relevant results. 2. Develop products that reflect strong privacy standards and practices. We build strong privacy settings into our products and are innovative about how we do this. For example, when we created Google Talk, We gave you the option to chat off the record so that your conversation is not saved. 3. Make the collection of personal information transparent. You can go to Google Dashboard to see all the information that is associated with your Google account. 4. Give users meaningful choices to protect their privacy. It's simple to control the privacy settings of each product. Make YouTube videos private. Click Report a Problem in Street View. Delete your search history. Move your data out of Google products easily with our data liberation effort. 5. Be a responsible steward of the information we hold. We work together with a large community of users, developers, and security experts to make the internet a safer and more secure place for you and your family. And we don't sell user information to other companies. Your information can make our products work even better for you. Our 5 privacy principles mean that you are in control of what you do and don't share when using Google. To find out more about Google's approach to privacy, visit the Google Privacy Center at google.com/privacy or click the link on the Google homepage.
So, John, Google is definitely trying to make us feel that they're protecting our privacy. How reassured are you by that video?
Well, the video doesn't reassure me much. I can say that some of the examples they cite, for example, being able to go off the record in Google Talk, is a great tool to empower users to take charge of their own privacy online. But Google didn't do this in a lot of other circumstances. And you brought up buzz. One of the things that that video talks about is giving users meaningful choices about what information they disclose and how Google handles it. When Google Buzz was launched, folks logged into their Google email accounts that morning, and there's a big splash screen that was really well designed. It was much better designed than the Afghanistan PowerPoint that you put up earlier. And it said, hey, we've got this cool new product called Google Buzz. If you'd like to try it, please click here. And there was another button that said, no thanks, I'd just like to go to my email. And if you clicked on, I'd like to try it, please click here, you get to try out Google Buzz. And if you clicked on, no thanks, I'd like to go to my email, you got to try out Google Buzz. That's not meaningful choice.
I mentioned in the news briefs the story about Facebook, where they wanted to have people have to opt out of a new sharing protocol for information with advertisers and our list of friends being shared with advertisers and things like that. Unless we opt out, senators like Chuck Schumer are trying to make them do it so that we would have to opt in order to allow Facebook to do that. Is that a good example of something related to this?
You know, Senator Schumer's position on this is potentially the right one. Facebook has really done a massive thing here in terms of disclosing their users' information to third parties without their users' consent. Opt-out in this case simply doesn't work. Users signed up for Facebook, and they provided a lot of personal information based on Facebook's promises that they'd be able to control where that information goes. And Facebook gives users a number of controls so that they can kind of take really granular steps about what information they want to share. Their location, certain photos, other information they post online, who their friends are. But then, in this latest alteration to their service, they decided that they were going to disclose lots of personal information from users to quote-unquote trusted third parties without ever obtaining users' consent. That's not right, it's unfair, and it's deceptive.
I get the sense that they really overreached here and that they're getting a serious backlash at Facebook. All they acknowledged after Schumer spoke out was that they thought it was a good idea for this policy to get more scrutiny. Do you think they're going to claw this back?
You know, I hope so, but the real tragedy of it is once you release this data to third parties, it's impossible to claw back that personal information that users entrusted Facebook with. It's one thing to launch a new service, promote it to users and say, hey, we'd really like you to sign up and join. We'd like you to say yes to this, and there are lots of benefits to it. It's quite another to go behind users' back and just hand out data to companies that they have no relationship with and that they may not have even heard of.
Speaking of the Senate, I believe tomorrow they're going to be debating or discussing the Electronic Children's Privacy Act, or ECPA. Do you want to tell our viewers what ECPA is and why it may be updated or discussed?
Sure. There's a lot of discussion these days around ECPA. ECPA is a law that was passed in 1986. That's when it was last updated. And it governs law enforcement access to individuals' data through wiretaps. It also governs law enforcement access and private access to stored communications. This is basically a law that protects consumers and citizens online from having governments and corporations snoop in their personal business. Unfortunately, a lot of the activities that we engage in online today weren't even contemplated in 1986, the last time that the law was updated. So that means that it's in dire need of revision, and a number of groups, including EPIC, have been calling for this for a long time. The Senate's giving it serious consideration, the House is giving it serious consideration, and we're hopeful that they will enact strong privacy protections to make sure that the government and corporations and other individuals aren't snooping in consumers' data.
Now, I think I misspoke and gave the wrong acronym for the law pertaining to children. ECPA is the one that pertains to adults and really everybody. Then there's COPPA, which is for the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. How is that different?
That's right. ECPA establishes baseline standards for everyone on the internet, but COPPA establishes even higher privacy protections for children. It recognizes that children are particularly vulnerable to online predators. It recognizes that children can't make informed or intelligent decisions about what sorts of information they want to share online. So it basically puts really high standards on anyone who wants to collect information from children on the internet.
Why do we want all this? I mean, people get so much free stuff from giving out a little personal information online, free software, free lots of things. I wonder if there's just a generational change here in values. Older people are much more protective of their privacy for whatever historical reasons, and younger generations think, well, okay, I have much more to gain than to lose here through just being transparent.
You know, one of the things that these laws do is make sure that individuals' preferences are respected. For example, ECPA doesn't prohibit individuals from sharing information online with Facebook. And the Federal Trade Commission doesn't prohibit Facebook from collecting information from adult users and informing them of how they're going to use it and moving on with their business plan. But what these laws do is make sure that companies don't engage in deceptive practices where they lie to consumers about what they're going to do with information and then use it behind their back. And in the case of children, it recognizes that kids simply can't make informed decisions about these sorts of things. These aren't teenagers. These aren't 20-year-olds. These aren't college students. These are kids under 13. And kids under 13 can't make meaningful choices about what information they want to give online services.
All right, and we are out of time. Thank you. That was very useful for our viewers, and I know your group, EPIC, is going to be providing one of the witnesses at the Senate hearing tomorrow, so maybe we'll see you or one of your colleagues on C-SPAN. Thanks a lot for joining us. Very, very good information.
Thanks, Brian.
And coming up, what kind of art happens when techies get together with artists who think a server is a waiter? This is Brian Lehrer Live.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Did you know that there are 8 national parks in New York City? There are also 8 parking spaces in New York City. But that's something else. New York City has Federal Hall, where George Washington became our first president, the Statue of Liberty, and Gateway, with beautiful beaches and protected wildlife. New York City has a range of national parks you won't find anywhere else, because you cannot move a national park. It's a park. Even if you wanted to get it out of here, you couldn't. America's spirit lives in our national parks.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with a CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
be on the team.
My name is LaDainian Tomlinson. By keeping kids in school, I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
So what if artists and web technologists could collaborate and bring their very different sensibilities together? What kind of sparks of genius would fly? Those were the kinds of questions that inspired 7 on 7, a conference organized by Rhizome, a nonprofit dedicated to new media art that is part of the new museum. Earlier this month, 7 artists and 7 technologists were paired off and given just one day to develop an idea. Here to take a look at some of the resulting works are Lauren Cornell, the executive director of Rhizome, and 2 of the participants in the project, David Karp, the founder of the short form blogging platform Tumblr, and artist Kristin Lucas, who joins us via Skype from Beacon, upstate. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
You with us there, Kristin? Can you see us and hear us?
Can you hear me?
Good,
Hi,
sure
Kristin.
can. Lauren, where'd the inspiration for 7 on 7 come from?
It comes from Rhizome and our mission. So Rhizome was founded in '96 to support the first artists who are working with the internet as a creative medium. And so we're really in that space every day where we're supporting all of the kinds of new forms of art that come about through working with the technology. And so we wanted to organize an event that would really kind of get that bridge between art and technology on a big platform.
And considering all the artists and all the technologists in our area, how did you choose which 7 and 7 to invite?
That's a really good question. You know, first of all, we wanted to choose people like David and Kristin who we felt like were, outstanding artists and technologists. But second, we gave them a really hard challenge, which is to come up with a fantastic idea, or at least something that you want to present to the public in a day. And so we wanted to choose people who were really kind of generous with their ideas, who we thought were open to risk, and those kind of attributes too.
So David, your project was with artists. You're the technologist. You were working with an artist named Ryan Trecarton, and we have a web mock-up of the project. Should we just put it up, or do you want to set this up first?
No, go for it. You can. You kind of got to see it. So Ryan was a really brilliant filmmaker who, started as soon as we started brainstorming all this stuff, really got deep into all of the shortcomings of YouTube today, which is really, the tool for anybody sharing video on the web. And he was just fascinated with ways that technology could help him make the media a bit more malleable, a bit more accessible to, or I guess I should say a bit more interactive, as opposed to something that you just play from A to B. That was his big fascination. So I said, well, what if we set it up so that there are a few more rules and make it something where the viewer can kind of steer the course of the video. So you'll see if we throw that video up, some video clips play back. Those are 10-second clips that users upload. They can tag them with 3 tags, but there's no identity. So there's no, YouTube stars, no accounts, no popularity. You throw your clip up of your, beach video from your vacation, or your cute cat, or your, daughter singing, and you assign it these tags, and we string all these videos together based on the tags. And if you ever see an interesting tag pop up that you want to follow, the user just clicks pink or clicks cute or puppy, and all of a sudden is kind of just watching this big full screen stream, really, of relevant clips.
And so what part of that was Ryan's and what part of that was yours?
That was about 4 hours of just sitting down and me sort of playing product director and asking him like what it was that he wanted out of technology and what he saw as the shortcomings of the tools that he had access to.
And Kristin, how about you? You worked with a software developer. You're the artist. The developer was named Andrew Cortina. Tell us what your day of brainstorming was like.
Well, Cortina and I spent about 6 hours just talking until we covered things like, what does new mean to us? If you get rid of something, it comes with a feeling of newness. And in a digital sense, you might at first experience loss, and that's followed by the feeling of a new beginning. But how do you get rid of yourself in a digital sense when it seems impossible to erase that personal electronic information trail? We also talked about what it means to bring something new into the world in 2010. Thinking about rapid spread obsolescence, built-in obsolescence, and think about, well, do we want to make a product, or do we want to make something that builds upon something that's already out there, and encourage a developer community, something that actively changes through the community. So we came up with identity swap, and users can log in using their Twitter account and audition to impersonate other people who, by following their Twitter feed, kind of getting familiar with who they are, and then auditioning, and the person who would receive a message who someone is auditioning to be, and they can set a permission level for access. So it's like sharing your identity and swapping it out, and maybe you get to take a little personal identity vacation, or maybe you want to outsource your identity. Perhaps there's an application for the field of journalism for other people to tweet from different events, and you know,
illegal immigrants.
Status. There's so many applications.
And we have a little video that demonstrates this app. Let's take a look.
Okay, so this is a page that you would log in, and you audition as someone else, or you follow tweets that are already being impersonated, or you give up your own identity to other people. This is an example of, like, say, I want to be John. What would John say? This person gets a message saying, Mike wants to be you, John. Here's what he'd have to say. And then John goes through and posts, gives permission levels, and there's a scoring system. So if you decide to, if you successfully impersonate, you get a point. But if somebody realizes you're an imposter who might be surveying the feeds, then you lose a point. So you can increase your social status by accumulating points, and there are also penalties, of course.
That's great. It's like Avatar without the war. Has anybody actually done this in real life, or is it just an artist application for now?
Well, actually, the reception afterward, I had heard that there are actually celebrities out there who are paying people to represent them in digital space, because who has the time for all of that? And we're hoping that people will play around with how they think of themselves, so they might, kind of stretch out their own persona a bit if this is more of a play space. But it also brings up identity issues that are related to trust and the private electronic, the personal electronic information stream that's out there and the risks involved. So we wanted users to feel that in order to make something new, we wanted users to agree to some degree of personal risk.
So Lauren, did all the 7 pairings of artists and technologists work out about equally well, or were there some where they really melded and others were like, I just don't get your world?
I was anticipating that some of it wouldn't work, but I would say, and the audience can testify to this, that they all really did work out. It was pretty amazing.
Is it an artificial distinction? Because I'll be honest, the first reaction that I had when I heard about this before I saw the stuff was, gosh, artist versus technologist. Some of the most creative people I know are technological artists. So yeah. I don't necessarily see the distinction.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is the field that Rhizome supports, really, is artists who are technological. So, I mean, we had 2 categories, artists and technologists, but many of them cross-list. Aya Badir, one of the artists that we'll talk about, one of the technologists, considers herself an artist, and many of the artists are programmers. So part of what we wanted to show is exactly that point, that the fields are very attuned and overlap.
So we have one more slide to show. It's really 5 photos, so why don't we put this up, and Lauren, you can walk us through this a little bit. These are images presented at the conference of mock-ups of project ideas.
Okay, so David and Kristin just did a very eloquent job at theirs, but I'll move through quickly. This is computer scientist Hilary Mason, artist Marc-Andre Robinson. Their project was created to address the kind of culture of disposable goods, as they described it, and they used the cheap umbrella, so something that you buy for $5 and then forget and throw away, as their inspiration. And basically they turned it into a mobile device that tracks and records its own history, so that if you throw it away, it will remember. It will remember and it will record its passage. So you'll have perhaps a bit of you'll think twice.
So February blizzard of 2010.
Yes.
I got turned inside out and flew down Broadway in the wind for 10 blocks. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
So this is Taube Auerbach, an artist, and Aya Badir, again, I just mentioned her. Their project references the history of kinetic art. So Marcel Duchamp, Hungarian artist Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, I think they were both artists that they showed. And what they wanted to do, and I should say this was also a sort of trend throughout the day, and David, please chime in, was to make technology more human. I think that's something that a lot of people are really concerned with. And so their project, which is an object that you can't really see in front of the desk, animates and starts moving when people leave the room, and then it stops and goes quiet when people enter. So it sort of has this personality of its own.
And we continue. Let's continue the tour.
This is Matt Mullenweg, founder of WordPress, and Evan Roth, who is an artist who works with open source and graffiti. And their project had to do with publishing, and basically they added a feature into WordPress, which was this kind of incredible thing where over the night they changed this platform that has 12 million users. So they added a function to it called Surprise Me Fun Mode, so that when you publish something, you can click that and it will show you a video that kind of congratulates you on publishing something. So they really wanted to kind of, make exciting or dynamic that experience of publishing.
I love that one.
Yeah.
And so other people were spontaneously creating art within their project.
Yes,
because
I think
they didn't just create a piece, they altered a platform.
That's right, and I think they had about hundreds of people used it overnight.
One of the coolest things there too is here's a founder who had been building this product for the last 7 or 8 years, and spends a day in a room with an artist who just gets them thinking about the little experiences, the little interactions that these millions of users that Matt was very familiar with, just got him thinking about them in a different way. And then he realizes, like, okay, you spend an hour or days sometimes writing a post you're really proud of, and you hit that publish button, and it's pretty unspectacular. And there, in a few hours, we're able to whip something up that plays a hugely encouraging video back right after you hit publish. It's brilliant.
So, Kristin, in Beacon, did you take any ongoing inspiration from your one-day collaboration that you think is going to affect you, influence you into the future?
Absolutely. I feel like we just really got started, Cortina and I, talking about all these issues, and we landed on something that interests both of us, but also the hours that I spent with Cortina and listening to his interests in language and shortening things and getting closer to really clear meaning. And as an artist, I'm sort of all over the place all the time. So, and he has a background in creative writing and poetry, and it's just, helped me think a lot more about form and how to clarify. And
That's great. David, same question for you. Inspiration from this for future work?
Oh, hugely. It's the same thing that I saw in Matt's project. In that case, they turned around and applied this to his product, his baby that he spent every day of the last few years thinking about and working on. Ryan and I created something sort of new out of this, but again, just gets you thinking about product design in a completely different way. To spend time with somebody who has different challenges, who has different insight into these tools that I'm thinking about or building or am able to build, is it gets you thinking about completely new problems to solve that you didn't know were problems.
So Lauren, now what?
Start planning the next one for next year. Yeah.
You got a next one?
We do, but it's hard to imagine getting a stellar group of participants again, I have to say.
Oh, they know the reputation as it grows, and people will flock to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you. And finally, here's a wonderful example of an artist using technology. The piano virtuoso Lang Lang played Flight of the Bumblebee at Davies Symphony Hall in San Francisco on an iPad. We knew that had to happen with an iPad. We just didn't think it would happen this quickly. That video uploaded by Charissa Louie. And that's it for tonight's show. We're here Wednesday nights live at 7:30 or as a podcast at CUNY.TV anytime. Next week, soap operas to teach new immigrants how to handle New York. And join me for my daily radio show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, the city's new taxi and limousine commissioner, David Yaski, takes calls from cab drivers. That's on AM 820 and 93.9 FM WNYC tomorrow morning at 10. Talk to you then.